Freddie Mercury and Mary Austin, the love that never ended. In the early 1970s, long before stadium concerts, global fame, and a legendary voice that would shake the world, a shy young man named Freddie Mercury was simply trying to survive in London. He wasn't a superstar yet. He wasn't the flamboyant rock icon people would later worship. He was Farrokh Bulsara, a young immigrant with big dreams and very little money. He studied art, designed clothes, and lived in cramped apartments with friends. His passion was music, but success seemed far away. And then one evening, in a small London boutique, everything changed. Because that's when he met Mary Austin. She worked at a fashionable clothing shop in Kensington. She was quiet, kind, and incredibly beautiful in a natural way. She wasn't a rock and roll girl. She didn't chase fame or musicians. She was simply herself. And that's exactly what caught Freddie's attention. At the time, Freddie was performing with a band that would soon become Queen rock band. But back then, the band had no record deal, no fame, no money, just ambition. Freddie's friend Brian May introduced him to Mary Austin. Freddie was immediately fascinated, but he was also painfully shy. So instead of confidently asking her out, he simply stared, admired, and gathered the courage. Eventually, he asked Mary on a date, and surprisingly, she said yes. The beginning of their love. Their relationship started quietly. No paparazzi, no fame, just two young people navigating life in London. Freddie was intense, passionate, and deeply emotional. Mary was calm, grounded, and understanding. She balanced him. While Freddie chased musical dreams with Queen, Mary worked regular jobs to help support them. They lived together in a tiny apartment. Money was always tight. Sometimes they barely had enough to pay rent. But Freddie believed something with absolute certainty. One day, Queen would conquer the world. Mary believed in him when almost no one else did. And that belief meant everything. Freddie often said later in life that Mary was the first person who truly understood him. She didn't love the performer. She loved the man. The rise of Queen. In 1973, Queen released their first album. It didn't explode overnight, but slowly, something began to change. Their music was unique, operatic, theatrical, bold. Songs like Bohemian Rhapsody would later redefine rock music forever. But during those early years, success came slowly. Freddie and Mary stayed together through it all. Touring, late nights, financial stress, uncertainty. Despite everything, Freddie wanted Mary by his side. In fact, in 1973, he did something that shocked her. He asked her to marry him. Mary was only 19 years old. Freddie gave her a beautiful ring and proposed. For a while, they were engaged. It seemed like a fairy tale rock and roll romance waiting to happen. But deep inside, Freddie was struggling with something he didn't yet understand. Freddie's truth. As Queen became more successful, Freddie began discovering new parts of himself. The music scene of the 1970s was wild, experimental, and full of freedom. Freddie started to question his identity. Eventually, he realized something that would change their relationship forever. He was attracted to men. At first, he tried to ignore it, but he couldn't hide it forever. One night, he finally told Mary the truth. It was one of the most difficult conversations of his life. Freddie admitted that he believed he might be bisexual. Mary listened quietly. Then she gently replied, "No, Freddie, I think you're gay." Freddie later admitted that Mary understood him before he fully understood himself. It was a heartbreaking moment. Their romantic relationship ended soon after. But something incredible happened. They didn't leave each other's lives. Instead, they became something even stronger. Best friends. Soulmates in a different way. A love that changed form. Freddie moved into his own apartment nearby. But Mary remained the most important person in his life. In fact, he once said something famous about her. He said, "All my lovers asked me why they couldn't replace Mary. But it's simply impossible." To Freddie, Mary wasn't just a former girlfriend. She was family. his closest confidant, the one person he trusted completely. When Queen became one of the biggest bands in the world, Freddie never forgot her. He bought Mary her own house, beautiful home in London, not as a gift of wealth, but as a symbol of gratitude, because she had stood beside him before the fame, before the fortune, before the world knew his name. Fame, chaos, and loneliness. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Queen had become global legends. Their concerts filled massive stadiums. Freddie's voice electrified audiences around the world. Songs like We Are the Champions and We Will Rock You became anthems. But fame came with a darker side. Freddie's lifestyle became increasingly chaotic. Wild parties, famous friends, endless nightlife. Yet despite all the glamour, Freddie often felt lonely. And whenever he needed comfort, he called Mary. She remained his emotional anchor. Even when Freddie entered new romantic relationships, Mary stayed the one constant in his life. Live Aid, the moment that defined him. In 1985, Queen performed at the legendary Live Aid concert. It would become one of the greatest live performances in rock history. In just 20 minutes, Freddie Mercury captivated an audience of nearly 2 billion people worldwide. The crowd sang along, clapped, cheered. It was magic. But behind the scenes, Freddie remained deeply connected to Mary. Despite the fame and adoration, the person whose opinion mattered most to him was still her. The final years. In the late 1980s, Freddie Mercury's health began to decline. He was diagnosed with AIDS, though the world didn't know yet. The illness was devastating. At the time, AIDS carried enormous stigma and fear. Freddie kept his condition secret from the public for years. But Mary knew. She remained by his side during the most painful chapter of his life. While the world saw a legendary rock star, Mary saw the vulnerable man behind the stage persona. She visited him constantly, supported him emotionally, and protected his privacy. Their bond became even stronger. Freddie's final gift. Freddie Mercury passed away in November 1991. His death shocked the world. Fans everywhere mourned the loss of one of the greatest voices in music history. But perhaps the most emotional revelation came when his will was read. Freddie left the majority of his estate to Mary Austin. His mansion, his fortune, his possessions, everything. He trusted her more than anyone else on earth. He once said something unforgettable about her. If things had been different, you would have been my wife, and it would have been yours anyway. A love that never disappeared. Mary Austin never tried to replace Freddie, and Freddie never replaced Mary. Their love simply evolved. It began as romance, transformed into friendship, and ultimately became something deeper than both. A lifelong bond, a connection that fame, distance, and even death could not erase. Today, when people remember Freddie Mercury, they remember the stage presence, the voice, and the unforgettable performances. But behind the legend, there is a quiet woman who knew him better than anyone. Mary Austin, not just his first love, but perhaps the greatest love of his life.